Well, howdy. Welcome to another episode of the Texas Titans podcast. I am so glad you guys are here. I've got a really cool guest for you today. Kurt VandeMotter is one of the preeminent executive search consultants in the nation, and he is headquartered in Dallas, Texas. And here's the thing that I like about Kurt. One, he's just a terribly nice guy. He's a very nice guy. But more than that, he's also very accomplished, and he has experience that is extremely wide in range and bandwidth. He started out in large corporate companies such as Pepsi and others doing branding, sales, marketing, had a lot of success there, and then decided to take the road of entrepreneurship in becoming an executive search consultant. So he hits a number of fronts on how to be successful, but not only that, it is literally his job at this point to seek out the most talented among talented in the world of business to place in, as it says on the linked executive search website, hard to fill positions. And if you know anything about this current job market, it's tight. And more than ever, folks like Kurt are being depended on for their breadth of knowledge, experience, and their extensive network of where the talent is that matches the need of the companies that are engaging folks like him. So let me read to you a little bit about Kurt's bio. Or read you his, not about his bio. I'm going to actually read his bio. I think that makes a little more sense there. So this is directly from the Link Executive Search site that surmises Kurt's bio. It's as an accomplished leader and hiring executive with over 25 years of experience, Kurt has demonstrated the ability not only to identify and attract extraordinary talent quickly, but match exceptional people to great teams, ensuring a win-win relationship for both the client and the individual. Additionally, he brings proven expertise from Fortune 500 and startup companies in the software, cable, wireless, and beverage industries. Kurt has also been an executive leader with extensive sales, marketing, operations, management, and product development experience gained from PepsiCo, Dr. Pepper 7-Up, AT&T Wireless, Jobster, and Intervoice. Committed to building highly effective teams, Kurt delivers energy, focus, and extraordinary networking to enhance your organization's human capital needs. Kurt is a graduate of Central Michigan University, where he was president of the American Society of Personal Administrators. Today, Kurt stays actively involved in the professional community and continues to make significant contributions to numerous boards and other special interest groups in the Dallas area. Okay, so I want to make a quick plug right here for Linked Executive Search. Now, you guys know I don't do paid interviews. There are times whenever I'll have like a special little promo at the beginning of the actual featured interview, but these interviews are not paid for. That's not the way this works. These are just people that I believe are talented and have a lot to offer my audience. And Kurt is such a guy. But I do want to say, if you are a hiring manager, if you are an executive out there, and you need top talent, Kurt is literally one of the rock stars of his business. I met him through SMU, the Cox School of Business. He works extensively with SMU and a lot of the top graduates there. So I cannot say enough good things about him. And for those of you who, again, you know what I like to do on this deal. I like to speak to those of you who are either thinking about starting a business, maybe you're in your first year of being out on your own, whatever the case may be. I want you to hear stories of entrepreneurship and startup, and Kurt has that story. But not only that, we talk a little bit about the wisdom he gained in the large corporate environment, and then also some tips and tricks about reinventing yourself, because I guarantee you there is someone listening to this podcast that the reason why you're listening to it is you're looking for some tips, some tricks, and some information on how to reinvent yourself. Maybe you're looking to make a career change. Maybe you're looking to start a business. Maybe you've been let go for some other reason. Maybe for some reason such as maybe your firm went out of business. Whatever the case may be, this is a great podcast for you. So I'm excited to bring to you my friend Kurt VandeMotter. I think it's one of the best podcasts that we've done as far as just good information from from a guy, from a professional that has a wealth of knowledge. So thanks for joining me. I hope that all of your years, everyone listening, that your year is ending on a very high note. I'm excited about what 2020 holds, but let's crush this last last part of Q4 of 2019. And thank you for spending a little bit of time with me here on the Texas Titans podcast. Thanks, folks. Enjoy the show. Hey, folks, before we get started today, I want to ask a special favor of you. I would like it if you wouldn't mind to go over to Amazon.com and check out a copy of my book, Push Play, Taking Your Life Off Pause. This is an updated and revised version of my first book, Push Play, that basically documents my escape from corporate America. This is not purely a book about entrepreneurship and setting out on your own per se, more than any, although that is a huge bulk of the book because that's what I did. I took the leap at 28 to go into entrepreneurship, get out of corporate America, and start trying to curate and plan the blueprint for the life that I wanted to lead. But more than anything, what this book does is it describes in very simple, plain, literally black and white terms how to live your life on your terms, how to design a life, not just a job, not just a career, but the life that you want to lead. I've had a great time being on this journey, and it's not over yet. And another thing that I want you to know that I describe in this book that's one of the major revisions is I talk about some failures that happened between the first book and this one because it has not always been success and an upward movement. There have been some peaks and there have certainly been some valleys, and I describe that in the book. So please do me a favor, Amazon.com, Push Play, Taking Your Life Off Pause, or you can also go to jasonrightnow.com and you can order my book there. It'll take you right to the Amazon page, jasonrightnow.com. I would be so grateful if you would pick up a copy. Christmas is around the corner. If you want a signed copy, let me know. Just shoot me an email at jason@textitans.com. I'll get you a signed copy. That might devalue the book, actually, so I don't know that I would recommend that. You'd probably be better off just getting one off Amazon. But seriously, please go read the book. And if you do, put it on social media, share it for me. This is guerrilla marketing. I don't have a big marketing budget. I self-publish this thing. I'm not pretending that this is a Random House or Simon & Schuster release. No, I self-publish this thing. I created Texas Titan Media to self-publish this and get it out there and to get it to the world. And I need your help for just pure guerrilla marketing. So please, if you have a copy, share it on social media and go to Amazon and write a review. That would mean the world to me. Thank you so much, folks. Well, welcome to another episode of the Texas Titans podcast. Kurt, how are you, my friend?
I'm excellent. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so thrilled that you're here because I told you you're going to hit this from several different facets. I mean, you're an incredibly successful entrepreneur, and you also deal with high caliber folks in the executive search business. So I just think you're going to have a lot to talk about that both me and my audience are going to benefit a great deal from. So I told you whenever I started the podcast, I made a list of several folks that I really wanted to visit with because I knew that you would have rich experiences and wisdom to share both personally and from your client base for the podcast. And so now you're here. I just got to tell you, man, it means a lot that you're taking this time.
Thanks. Looking forward to this.
All right. Well, first of all, let's get started. So we talked a little bit offline about how you've kind of reinvented yourself. So take me through your business career and most importantly, as we go through that story, that story of your business life, I want to know when you decided, all right, I want to be on my own. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I'm going to do my own thing. So where did it all begin? Let's start there.
Excellent. So, I think that from the very beginning, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. Came out of college and got a huge opportunity to work in the beverage industry. So Pepsi for 10 years, Dr. Pepper 7-Up for 8 years. Got to move between operations, sales, marketing, brand. Really great experience, 18 years. Left there and went into the left the consumer packaged goods and went into technology with AT&T. It was Craig McCaw. Had a great 4 years of experience there in marketing, opened up all the retail stores. It was just going into a B2C episode, so a lot of explosive growth. Stayed there for a couple of years, and then I got my first taste of entrepreneurship, but it wasn't my money. I got the opportunity to join a startup, and we were in the unified communication space.
Okay.
It was, I joined the team when we raised $5 million. And we were so far ahead of ourselves. The technology that we had back in the late 90s today is what you see everywhere you go in the unified communication space.
Wow.
Really, really exciting. We ended up raising about $80 million, and then we went through a hostile takeover.
Okay.
I came back to Dallas, got to know my family again, and then did a couple of other small startups. Ended up with a company in Dallas in running their North America sales organization. Mm-hmm. And my boss called me on the 4th of July and said, I've eliminated your job. You can go do whatever you want to do now, Kurt. Come back and negotiate your severance package as soon as you get back from vacation.
Wow. And so what did you do?
So I came back and I negotiated that severance package, but I had made a decision at that point that I wanted to do something on my own, and it forced me into making that hard decision and to taking that hard right turn.
Yeah.
So as I said, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know where I wanted to do it. I didn't know if I wanted to have a car and I drove people to the airport every day.
Right.
I didn't know if I wanted a convenience store. Should I look at a laundromat? I had no idea what I wanted to do. Yeah. So I started the exploration and ran into somebody, called one guy that I'd done business with in the past, and he owned a search firm, and I told him I was back on the bench.
Okay.
And he said, Kurt, why don't you come into the recruiting industry? And he owned a business in Galena, Illinois, and I didn't want to relocate the family to Galena, so I came back to Dallas and told some people that I was interested in that business. Right. And that's when I launched the company back 13 years ago.
All right, now what I would like to do is back up just a little bit where you're having to have this truly kind of a moment of introspection. You've had a successful business career, both with large firms, small. Take me through what it was like doing that evaluative process so that when you come to the conclusion that, hey, you're going to join, you're going to get in the search business, you're going to be an entrepreneur, what did you do? Is it the Ben Franklin list? And the reason why I ask is because now, and we're going to get into this obviously, I got to believe you get to play counselor quite a bit at a certain point because you're managing careers.
Right.
I mean, at a very high level.
Right.
So what was your process through going through that major decision-making time of your life? What did that look like, and how long did it take for you to make a decision?
So it was that 4th of July, and it took me about 2 months.
Okay.
And I looked at franchise models. I looked at a lot of different things. I did a lot of soul searching and what kind of business did I want to be in? The people business? Did I want to own an inventory? I looked at and evaluated what my cash flow was and what would I have the affordability to do. Right. It's a big jump off that cliff. Amen. Because you're used to getting a paycheck, and now you've got to go do it yourself. Yeah. So when somebody that I didn't know that well really held my feet to the fire to say, you'd be really good at search, I came back to Dallas and I talked to about 45 or 50 different executives and said, I'm looking at this industry and I'm looking at this as a career. What do you think? And I couldn't find people to tell me anything other than you should join our firm to go do it. Right. It was just a natural. Right. So then it became the hard lifting. Okay, now I'm going to go do it, but now I got to go get some clients. Yeah. Now, I'll share with you that in the back of my mind, because I think that every entrepreneur goes through this, in the back of my mind, I thought, well, I'm going to go do search, but if it doesn't work out, I'm going to be in the job market. I'm going to be talking to companies. I'll just find myself another job. If I can't make the search thing go, I'll still have my feet in the fire. Yeah. So it took about 4 or 5 months to get the first client, and then it was just an acceleration.
Really? let me ask you this, because I mean, our stories sound so similar, because that's kind of how I got into the executive search business, except I was, like I told you, it was very early in my career. I wasn't nearly as accomplished as you were and seasoned at that point, but had a very dear friend that I loved and respected that was recruited away to start an executive search firm and brought me over, and it was a startup. My problem was, I guess, probably being at that point in my career, I was like a kid in a candy store. I would see all these cool jobs, these cool companies, big and small, and go, oh, I want to go work for them. I want to go work for them. I want to go work for them. I was there ever a time, and I was recruited in, so I had no equity in my deal, but you do. You're starting up. Was there? Tell me about those early days. Now you're starting. You've put together the burn rate to know, okay, here's when I run out of money, but now I've got clients.
Right.
Was there ever a time where you were working with a client, you're struggling in your own business, you're having to make some serious, challenging decisions that you thought, man, I want to pick up the phone and say, hey guys, I know you've got me searching for this this placement, but I'll take it. Did you ever face those moments?
Yeah, no, I mean, once once we got into the business and the business took off, there was never a question of going back. And it then became very clear that there's no going back in the sense of ever going to work for a corporation again,
right,
in a big company, because the freedom, the flexibility, the ability to select your own clients, all of the things that really drive entrepreneurship, yep, they're so strong that it never became a question.
Right.
There were challenges. There's ups and downs. There's peaks and valleys. There's no question. There always will be. I'm convinced. And I think as a male, Jason, I mean, this is going a little bit deeper, but as a man, and not that females don't have these same anxieties, but with being a family man and having a family, you always have that anxiety as being the one that is supposed to be bringing the bread home, is whether or not you're going to be able to continue that success. Right. It's when that anxiety kicks in that the phone rings. And somebody says, hey, do you have time? I need a new VP of sales. Can you help me with that search?
Right.
It's like, man, there is a higher power.
Yeah.
Somebody's listening to this.
Right.
I don't need to be worried about it.
Right.
So not that I don't worry about life and things,
yeah,
but I don't worry about that part of my business as much as I used to.
Right, right. Now, tell me this, because, first of all, for those who have never been through the process of either being recruited or have no clue what the executive search business is like, I want you to kind of describe that, because it is a hunt and kill business. I mean, you eat what you kill. I mean, it's literally it is the pure essence of sales and consulting that there is out there. So, what was your strategy for building that book of business? I mean, every day, whenever you go, okay, you flip the lights on. Now you're in business for yourself. And I guess, was it Link back then? Was it okay? So you start the company. Everything from morning routine. How did you prospect? How did you build that book? Who were the contacts? Because there's somebody listening to this podcast right now, Kurt, that's hearing you, and they're going, I want to do what that guy did. Maybe not executive search, but I want to start a business. I want to start an insurance firm. Whatever. What did that look like, and what were the disciplines that you executed? And did you still execute today, because the success was linear? You could literally trace it back to the success you have now was those habits you started back then.
Right. So that's a great question. I think that, this is where the conversation can go both candidate, and it can go, for somebody that might be starting
Absolutely.
a business. Because I coach candidates every day on finding a job, and it's the same foundation. One of the things is just in building a business is to make sure you've got a strong foundation, meaning that you've got all the documentation put together, and that you've checked all your I's and crossed all your T's as it relates to how you're just going to start your business, what the banking, the LLCs, the working with an attorney if necessary. Obviously, minimizing your expenses on all of those things. Just talking to other people is a great place to start.
Right.
But that foundation work is also just critical to being able to then layer on the next thing, which is the discipline of really going out and hunting. When I coach candidates, I remind them when they were in college, their professor in a sales class might have handed them a pen and said, sell me this pen.
Right.
Well, that pen's got sleek, it's good looking, it writes well. Well, the candidate in a job search is the pen. They've got to go sell themselves. In my case, I had to go sell my business. So that discipline was identifying key executives in the community that I could meet with every day. And I had a calendar full of coffees, lunches, a drink after work, and any other meeting and conversation that I could have with anybody in the middle. And then it was just letting my network know exactly what I was doing and so that they could possibly refer business to me. I've always said, Jason, that your network is your net worth.
Yeah.
And when you're starting a business, that is really it's the foundation. And it doesn't mean that that network is going to give you the money to do what you need to do, but they've got to be your greatest resource to go to as far as bouncing ideas and having honest, hard discussions about what to do next.
Right. And I think that is so invaluable because, I've talked about that on this podcast. One of the very first episode I did was with John Wilding, who's an attorney here in town I believe you probably know, John.
Very well.
Yeah. So, John, the key to his success, he's an incredibly bright and accomplished attorney, but he'll tell you the wellspring of his business is that incredible networking ability that he has built with his last Tuesday happy hour.
Exactly.
Ritz, that now he's even doing one in Washington, D.C., and now he's doing one in Frisco. These are things that aren't going to bring immediate business that day. It's not transactional, but he has built a network.
He's built a and he's done it for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
He's done it consistently.
Yeah.
And it's not that the payback, he never did it with the payback in mind.
Exactly.
And I think that that's the key. Yeah, there's no question. And you to this day, Jason, 98% of my business is referrals.
Yep.
I mean, I do a little bit of social media. I do a little bit of social marketing to keep my name and keep relevance out there. To be relevant is really important.
Right.
But 98% of my business is coming from other executives and people that I've worked with in the past.
Well, and that's what's so key, I think, too, that people that they underestimate that repeat and referral business because everybody thinks, well, I've just got to be hunting. Yes, you got to fill the pipeline. But when I own my real estate brokerages, that's what I would tell agents. I'm like, look, by the time, if you survive this business for 5 years plus, you need to flip from going 20%, repeat and referral to 80% new. It needs to be 80% repeat referral and then a very small bucket of new business because you have built that network. And I mean, let's bring it right here to today. The reason why I was able to start an interview-based podcast, which a lot of people, they thought, you're nuts. You're going to have to go find people all the time. And I was like, well, you know what? The fortunate thing I've done is I've built this huge network of folks that are a lot smarter than me, a lot more accomplished, and I've never asked them for anything, and they're willing to sit down and talk to me. And so even in an instance like this and beyond, because what you said is so critical about what John did was he never expected anything in return. And as I'm talking to people about, because I'll talk to, young undergrads or just, young people earlier in their career, and I'm like, start building your network right now and then maintain a friendship.
Right.
I still have mentors that, looking back, man, they came 20 years ago that if I pick up the phone right now, they're willing to, I'll make a call for you. And
absolutely.
And so now tell me what you do to maintain kind of some touch points. I know that there's certain, folks that you're going to touch daily, then weekly, monthly. Mm-hmm. How do you maintain your network and keep that relationship tight?
Well, I think it's mostly by just keeping the blinders off, Jason. Mm-hmm. And that is that, today my day-to-day activity is 80% working for clients. So I've got, a CEO search that I'm working for in California, and it's talking to candidates. It's talking to prospective candidates. It's talking to the existing candidates that are in the funnel, keeping them posted on what's going on in the progress. So a lot of communication. I mean, I burn through conversations all day. Right. So not, the hunting and the looking for and talking to is becomes more relevant in me trying to figure out ways that I can help introduce people and connect people for reasons that they don't even anticipate. Right. Like what John does is creating events that I can include or I can go to or I can participate in that allow me to have great conversations with new executives and people in the community that may not know me.
Right.
I mean, I always tell people that I have nothing to sell, but if you didn't know me and you never knew what I did, then you'd never be able to help me. So I'm not asking you to buy my services, but will you allow me to come in and just talk about what I do for a little bit? Because what I do is a lot different than the other recruiters.
Right.
And so, and I always ask, funny, Jason, I always ask for that in a 9-minute conversation. Because most people know what recruiters do.
Right.
But it's not until after you've talked to me for 9 years you realize the passion that I've got for people.
Absolutely.
And that's a huge differentiator.
I love that. That's a great story. I love that. That just, let me tell you what I do, because you're right. I mean, and I told you that before we got on, is that was one of the reasons why I did not stick with executive search, is because I didn't understand the value of it until later on when I got on the other side of the table, the hiring table, and you go, man, I mean, losing an employee can cost you way more than that annual salary, right?
Right, absolutely.
A bad employee, not having someone who is out there in the market and understands the reputation of the human capital coming in, can cost an enterprise so much money.
That's right.
And that's the story that you're able to tell
all day
right?
long. And companies make those mistakes, and not because they aren't well educated and they're not smart business people. But when that event happens, it can be it can be discussed in a succession planning at a very senior level, or it can be just a VP of sales leaves. But the point is that most companies, families don't make or plan for that event early on in the process. And so it is a painstaking event. And many times they rush to a decision and they put the wrong person in that place.
Right.
And it's doesn't happen all the time. But when it does, it is real costly. Yeah. It's costly to the organization. It's costly to the customers. It's costly to everybody involved. And it generally is, depending on the type of the role that this person has in the company, it can be systemic.
Yeah, yeah. Now let me ask you this, because so if I am an executive and I'm getting a call from Kurt, that means I'm a pretty talented individual, because you do retained search.
Correct.
For the listener, that means that companies pay Kurt to go to work. He's
right.
not just out there hunting, hoping that, and that speaks to the level of success he's had and kind of the field he's playing on. So if I'm getting a call then from you, that means I'm obviously a pretty talented individual. And so therefore you get to see literally the cream of the crop. Talk to me a little bit about the commonalities and the common threads amongst the talent that you deal with on a daily basis. What are their habits? What are the things? And I know some of them are going to be terribly obvious. It's you're the hardest worker, whatever. But what are some things that you see as commonalities in these organizations that make them that recruit that's
right.
getting your phone call?
Well, so when you get a call from me as a recruiter, I'm trying to help a company solve a problem. They've got a position, they've got a part of their organization there's a weak link. And so when I'm calling candidates, I'm trying to find people that have solved these problems previously in their career. So it could be at a CEO level, where I'm working with an organization that is in the e-commerce business, but they don't feel like they've kept as relevant as they need to with an Amazon or with other players. And they know that they can't continue at this pace, and they've got to bring somebody from the outside that can help this company reinsert themselves in that particular marketplace. So my point then is when I'm making that call to those executives, I'm listening for and talking to that executive because I think they've solved that problem in their past. They've done something that's very similar. It may not be in that exact industry, but they've solved that problem in the past. Right. Those are the candidates. That's when a recruiter's calling. It could be because you come from a great brand. And there's been times when I worked in the consumer packaged goods business, recruiting still do a lot of that, but with one particular company, and they would give us a list of 8 companies that they wanted people out of. Then you would specifically go to Hershey. You would specifically go to Kellogg. You would specifically go to those companies and try to find the talent that's doing those jobs or has done those jobs or would like to do those jobs to try to steer them away from there.
Right.
But most of the time, we are always looking for somebody that can solve a problem that this organization's had or they envision having in the future. And we're looking for candidates that can tell us those stories about what they did, how they did it better than the last candidate.
Okay. So therefore, I would learn from that as problem solver, but also being able to communicate.
Communicate,
the idea, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, because like for the individual out there, I mean, while we've got an absolute pro on the podcast today, for that executive that's out there that's hoping to get a call from the proverbial headhunter. What advice do you have for them to make sure they can tell that story in a compelling way?
Yeah, so knowing your background and knowing your history and what you've done and having a story about, if you're a CEO, having a story about how you managed finance, HR, marketing, how you brought teams together, how you delivered extraordinary leadership skills for the future, how you maybe built a 5-year strategic plan for that organization. Again, it can be in a number of different areas, but having those quick stories and being able to tell a recruiter very quickly of what you've done based on what they're looking for. So it's the listening skills first.
Yeah.
You got to be able to listen, understand what they're looking for, and then to be able to project and communicate quickly what you've done and how you've done those solved those problems in the past.
Right. Now, here's something too that, like I mentioned to you earlier, that I think is one of the most challenging pieces of your business is that when you're dealing with human beings, and literally the human being becomes the product that you're trying to get into the client firm. Sometimes you're dealing with a product that doesn't want to be sold. And you may go down the road a long way.
Right.
And you being the recruiter in the middle, the search consultant that's there, and you're sitting there going, candidate, I know you. I know your family. I know this is the right fit for you. Or let's say the client is going, Kurt, you just missed it. But you're going, no, I didn't. I know you guys. How do you manage that process? What are your tools and tips for navigating those waters? I know you can't win them all. Sometimes people are just going to be unreasonable. They're not going to, quote unquote, get it.
Right.
But how do you navigate those difficult situations?
Right. That's a great question. So, again, let's back up. So the candidate, from a communication perspective with the candidate, it is ongoing communication to know exactly where that candidate is, how they feel, what their biggest concerns are, and so forth. That's one side of the equation in managing your the number of candidates within interviewing for a company. On the company side, there's no question. I get this all the time. Companies say to me, "Who's your favorite candidate?" I don't have a favorite in this race. All of these candidates are equally as qualified.
Yeah.
What I can't interview for is fit. And that's where the organization has got to be in love with or really know that individual and to understand that they're a good fit for our company. Right. They've done these things. They've had these great accomplishments. They've solved these problems, but are they a good fit?
Right.
And that I can't interview for, but I can many, many times, Jason. I'll go back to a company and they'll say, I don't want to talk to Dave. Why don't you want to talk to Dave? He's too e-commerce, he's too sales, too much marketing. I need somebody that's more operational. I disagree. I've spent 3.5 hours on the phone with Dave. I think he's got a very sound foundation on his operational experience. You're looking at his resume, aren't you? Don't look at his resume anymore. Look at the notes that I'm sending you, because the notes demonstrate his operational excellence just as much as his sales, marketing, and e-commerce excellence. Right. And then they take the interview, and they're like, whoa, that was amazing. Yeah. He should be a top quality candidate. Well, they would never have seen that because they were only looking at his resume. They didn't have those hard discussions that I did.
Right. So that's where you have demonstrated, obviously, the listening skills and understanding of the candidate to be able to then convey that message. Because I can't imagine whenever you've just got a rock star in the stable and you've got a company going, because you have had that interaction. You've
Absolutely.
given that time, right? That's got to be frustrating.
And it's funny though. Many times, I hate to say this, many times it's one of the top 2 or 3 candidates that I talk to that ends up being the favorite and then gets the job.
Really?
Even in a search that can take 3 or 4 months,
Yeah.
it's generally one of those first few conversations that I engage with people that end up being the candidate that gets the job.
Yeah, yeah. And that's kind of interesting. I think first impressions are so important, and coming generally that's kind of like any really good idea, if you will. If you land back at the first idea, okay, I knew I was right all along, and it's amazing how many times that happens. All right, this is maybe a little more philosophical than you want to get into, and I don't even have a particular answer I'm looking for, Kurt, but given you've been in the business now, I mean, you're 30 years almost? Or,
yeah,
right?
Plus,
so,
right?
Yeah, over 30 years. So the landscape is changing dramatically in corporate America, right? I mean, from the candidate side and the client side. Talk to me about the evolution of the workplace where things are much more socially conscious, and how both candidates are having to maybe, I don't want to say retool, but think of things differently, as well as the clients thinking, hey, if you want to get this guy, you're going to have to display some things you've never displayed before. What has that looked like over these last 3 decades in the business?
Well, that's a great question. So I'm going to go back. It's 4 decades almost.
Oh my goodness!
So my early Pepsi days back in the early '80s, and I joined them as a district sales manager or fountain sales rep and so forth. And I think about how they recruited me. I was in the first college recruiting class that PepsiCo had, where they went into universities and hired college kids to come work for their company.
Okay.
So the expectations of us young people coming into their company were very, very high, because we were taking jobs away from guys that had been on a truck and wanted those supervisory responsibilities, so they didn't have to lift the cases. They knew they couldn't do that for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
So very high pressure, but an extraordinary training opportunity and so forth. What I'm getting at is it's the foundation of corporations' hiring decisions. And
I'm all right hearing that phone ring. If that's dollars on the other line, man, we can push pause anytime.
It's still people. Mm-hmm. It's still people. Mm-hmm. And it's the people that are afraid to get their hands dirty and their feet wet. They want to reinvent themselves. They're willing to learn. They're willing to, technology has taken over today. I mean, our lives are consumed by technology. We can't go anywhere without a cell phone. I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely ludicrous. So has that helped the recruiting industry, or does it hurt it? It only helps us because we can build even bigger and faster relationships. But the fact is when it comes down to a company hiring, they're still hiring a person that's still got values. They've got, things that make them tick. And we're never going to get away from that. Yeah. But being able to for a company, being able to ask the right questions, and for candidates, I did an episode recently on dating. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interviewing is dating. Companies hiring is dating. Yeah. And every client that I start with, I talk to them about it being a dating process. Right. And every candidate I talk to, I say, this is a dating process. That's the big difference, is that for candidates that are really, really good, there are multiple opportunities out there. Yeah. And so they need to date companies as much as companies are dating them to figure out where they're the best fit.
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes so much sense to me, because even with, right now where it seems like, again, having been out of the corporate landscape for so long, and with the exception of doing some advisory work and that sort of thing, it seems like to me you'll never get away from the fact, no matter how many metrics you put in place to try to get the right number of this person, and this whatever, at the end of the day, companies are going to hire who they like, who right? I mean, and there's just
absolutely, and
you can't just come up with some magic formula that's universally applicable from company A to company Z. And I know people want that,
right?
But it's if people are going to, and candidates are going to go to companies that reflect their values and what they like. You just can't get away from that, can you?
You'll never be able to get away from it.
Yeah.
We'll never get away from it. Anytime you try to hide that, or go in the opposite direction, or to put those feelings or those concerns, away,
Yeah.
it's bad.
Yeah.
And one of the things I encourage candidates to do as they're going through a search is to make a list. The top left, the things they like to do. On the right, the things they don't like to do. And on the bottom, the things they're good at.
Yeah.
And on the bottom left, the things they're not good at. Because we want, as a candidate, we want to end up in a company that we're spending all the time on that left side of the page, doing the things that we like to do and the things that we're good at. Yeah. And so companies want the same thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely, they want the same thing. They want candidates that are going to come in and they're going to be fired up about helping them solve problems and becoming involved in their mission and the company's goals.
Man, that is such good advice. I mean, because let me tell you something, and I probably wouldn't have had the guts to do that whenever I was just starting out, but to be able to, now that I'm older, like I literally will not do things I just don't think I'm good at. I just say, no, I'm not going to do that. My wife and I will have those conversations, and now my ego's kind of out the door, and I'll go, Jimlin, will you do this? Because I'm terrible at it. You
Right.
know? Whereas there was a point in my life where I'd be like, absolutely not. I'm going to do it whether I'm good at it or not.
Well, Jason, let's talk about back to business strategies. You're starting a business. One of the things, there's the Malcolm Baldrige Awards out there, and that award is given to companies for doing the right things, right?
Yeah.
So as an entrepreneur, one of the things I realized early in the business was that I was bad at was the finance side of it. Mm-hmm. I had to find an accountant that could take my bad records and everything that I spend and be able to code it in a way that my accountant then can do a tax return.
Right.
So I started doing it all in QuickBooks.
Yep.
But I got it so screwed up, and my business is simple.
Yep.
I don't have inventory.
Right. Right.
It should be pretty easy.
Right. Right.
But that's when I decided to go find somebody that could do it better and faster, cheaper than I could do it, so that I could concentrate my time on doing the things that I was good at.
Man, that is so awesome, because let me tell you something. And again, okay, those of you who are out there listening that want to be an entrepreneur, listen up, because I had the exact same experience. When I bought my first real estate company, first of all, I thought, not only can I do everything, but I have to do everything. I got to show everybody that I can, run my little world. And true story. So when it came to payroll taxes, and again, real estate, there's no inventory. Pretty simple business.
Right.
No inventory, minimal actual employees. Everybody else is 1099 contract workers. All the realtors are. And I get online. I'm doing my own payroll, and I set up an EFTPS account. And I'm making I'm really on top of things, thinking, hey, I'm going to make a deposit for payroll taxes every time I cut checks. I'm such a small business. I could do it every, I think, quarter. I didn't even have to do it monthly. I can't remember what the deal was, but I was like, I'm going to do it every time. Well, little did I realize that just because you make the payments doesn't mean anything. You got to file the report every time too. So I get this letter. Now, I'm the ripe old age of 29 at the time, and I get a letter from the IRS saying, we're about to shut you down. We're going to take your assets. And I'm just freaking out.
Right.
And so I call the IRS. Very nice lady that was there in town in Tyler where I bought my first real estate firm. She comes over and sits down with me and says, no, look, it's great you've paid the money, and I see where you are paid up, but that doesn't matter. The reports are more important than the money, and it taught me something. But what I realized, I'm terrible at that, and I don't want to do it. I hate doing it, and it takes me away, and it saps the energy from doing those things you love to do, right?
Absolutely.
And so I've been there, man. But still, it took me a while to realize that, because it seemed like an admission of weakness, and that's why I love that you ask your candidates that question. What are you not good at? Because I used to have this canned answer on interviews, where whenever I would get asked the proverbial question, what are your strengths and weaknesses? And my weakness was, well, I just work too hard. I just I'm too hard on myself.
Exactly.
Something like that. That's really, it's like kind of like that virtue.
I like to read so much that
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm just so obsessed with learning and knowledge, that sometimes I think I may know too much. But I didn't have the courage to go, here's my weakness. I hate doing finance. I hate QuickBooks. I hate doing these sorts of things. That's what I think is so cool about what you did, because it's so. And also, how many times have people not taken the time to sit down and go, what are the things I just really suck at?
Well, in today's environment, there's so many things that we can, as a small business owner, we can have somebody else help us out to do. And we need to lean on those people. So as a startup, you're doing the things that you really like to do. Right. and where the revenue is too.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're an artist and you don't like to paint, but you're really good at selling the art, you're probably not going to be very successful.
Absolutely.
You need to go to an art studio and sell the art that the guy's painting.
Yep, absolutely. And that's what I see all the time with like people in sales. They think, oh, I've got to be the sales manager. I got to be VP of sales. Yeah, but you're crushing it out in the field selling. You may think that, but no. And it's just like the professional baseball player that never hits over 250 but wins a World Series as a head coach.
Right.
And it took me forever, Kurt, to figure that out. So I appreciate you sharing that with the audience, because I think it's one of those things that we just don't focus enough on, is find out what our weaknesses are, and then, look, you're always going to have to do things you don't want to do, but if you can minimize them,
absolutely,
then and free up the bandwidth to do those things that you can really crush.
Absolutely. You, your family, everybody around you is going to be a lot happier.
Now, as an entrepreneur, so right there, we just touched on something you didn't like to do, you weren't good at. Give the listener and me kind of your best day as an entrepreneur, why you have done it for so long on your own, and your worst day as an entrepreneur, and a moment where you thought, man, what have I done, if you've ever had that moment.
Yeah. So, my best day is every day, because I just get to talk to candidates, and it's a passion I have about learning from people and learning new things. And it's just, it's just, I have new friends every day. Yeah. And it's not that everybody will take my phone call, but it's easy to have conversations because we're talking about fun things. I think the hardest days are the days, and it doesn't happen very often. Thankfully it's happened very, very, very small portion of the time, but it's when you get a call from a company and a candidate didn't work out.
Yeah.
And it's unsettling. It breaks your heart, because not because you worked so hard to find the right candidate, but then it's what did we do wrong, or what did you do wrong? What did I do wrong? What do we need to do differently the next time? Right. And so those are hard conversations. The third hard conversations is just releasing candidates. And a lot of recruiters don't do that. But, you've got 5 candidates you're talking to. One's going to get the job, and you got to let the other 4 know that they didn't get the job. Yeah. Nobody wants to make those phone calls. Yeah. But that's my responsibility, because I'm speaking on behalf of the company. Yeah. It's not my brand. That they're going to remember. They're going to remember the brand of the company that they were interviewing with. Right. So those are always hard conversations, and nobody wants to talk about that.
Yeah. So, and also, now one of the things that you talk about that I think it fuels your engine, because it's obvious that you're a high EQ guy. Very interpersonal communication is not a challenge for you, but you are a human, and you have to keep your batteries charged. What do you do to stay, to still get up every day after all these years and still go do the things that have made you successful? Kind of, what is your regimen? What is your? Everything from, do you meditate? Is it what is? You're obviously you stay fit. What does it look like?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I get up and I go to mass every day.
Okay.
That's my 8:00 start date. I don't do much beforehand. If I have interviews, I get up and do those, and I'll happy to have conversations at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. But really, my plug-in is 8:00 at mass. That's 25 minutes. And then it's just off to the races. It's, generally the week before, setting, the priorities and the communication that have to happen. Mm-hmm. Everything's scheduled into my calendar, so I know who I'm talking to, where I'm talking, what I've got to talk to the candidates about, where we're at in the cycle. And you're just juggling balls. Mm-hmm. Right now I'm working on 4 different searches, and we're at 4 different phases in all of the searches. So in one place, we're waiting for the candidate to accept the final offer, where in another situation, I'm still trying to find 5 or 6 candidates that are the best 5 that I can present to a company. Right. So every day is different, but that's how I start my day. And then I end my day early every day, not meaning that that's the end of the day, because I come home and work also, but I spin 4 days a week. So I get on a bicycle and I spin. When it's a nice day like today, if I can get outside and ride my bicycle outside, then I love to do that as well.
What indoor bike do you use?
I'm not a Peloton guy, but I'm go to the gym, because it's all about camaraderie.
I'm a diehard Peloton.
Are you?
Oh,
I'm afraid to bring it home, because it's the camaraderie. It's going to the gym and seeing my friends that I don't have, and going to work every day, because I work in a smaller environment.
Right.
So that's my social.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're very smart for that, because my wife gets on to me, because look, the Peloton feeds into it's weird. I'm one of these introverts disguised as an extrovert.
Right.
I really am. And so like all of my quote unquote friends and advisors are guys that I just read and listen to on podcasts, like like James Altucher and Tim Ferriss and Ryan Holiday. These guys that don't know me from Adam, but I like almost consider them friends. And
Right.
then I got a Peloton. Now this is kind of cool, and the listeners, all the listeners that listen regularly are laughing right now because I always bring up Peloton, and I always bring up Matt
Sure.
Wilpers, who's like my favorite trainer, who I have ridden in his class, and I've met Matt. He's a very nice guy, and we exchange social media messages every now and then. But it's kind of, I think you're wise to do that because it's kind of caused me to, it's enough interaction that I'm like, okay, I'm good, but they're on the other side of the screen.
Right.
So, but I am a big advocate for the Peloton.
Yeah, no, I think it's been an amazing invention. My kids have them.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it. But for me, it's that time to get out of the house and have camaraderie with friends and people that I wouldn't normally get to interact with.
And don't you think that, especially doing something like what you've talked about that requires such a high level of energy and interaction, fitness is just, to me, I was listening to a podcast on the way over here today about just the human body and the benefits of what you put in your body and exercise, and especially, again, entrepreneurs out there, the most important and vital business machine you have is your brain, your
That's it.
body, it's you. And so it just amazes me that some people don't get it. I can't imagine waking up and not doing some sort of physical activity.
Oh, absolutely. And, and I used to, I think when I was younger, Jason, I used to run in the morning. I'd get up at 5 o'clock and run. Now, as I got a little older, that sleep in the morning is a little bit more valuable.
Right,
okay?
right.
And so, but I exercise every day at some point.
Yeah.
If I'm not walking 3 or 4 miles, then I'm at the gym doing spin or doing something else. But I love it, and it's I got to keep up with these kids. We've got 5 kids, so I got to keep up with kids and grandkids too.
Yeah.
So I can't stop.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Well, okay. Now here's where I want you to put on your advisor. Now, and again, I know that it's the corporate client, the company. That is your client. That's who strokes your check. However, you have learned so much throughout the years of candidates, I got to believe, throughout every portion of their career. So there's 2 people I would like for you to speak to, that, not that these 2 are more important than any phase of a career, but there's that individual that's early in their career. And I'd like you to give them some advice on how to best prepare to write that story that they're one day going to have to tell, God willing, if they're successful and they get a call from you.
Right.
What's the best way to write that story? So that's one. The second is that senior level executive kind of beyond the midpoint of their career, and they've just had their teeth kicked in.
Yep.
Like what you said, the company just called them and said, hey, you're done.
Absolutely.
How do they best prepare to pivot at
Right.
that moment? So just talk to those 2 folks.
So for the young person coming out of school, wherever they're coming out of, I think that it's just incredible that they gain as much experience as they can wherever they can gain that experience. One of the things, Jason, that the younger generation doesn't have, and it's taken me a long time to figure this out, but the younger generation doesn't have that you and I had, is that I started working when I was 12 years old. It wasn't because my family was in destitute or anything else. I came up from a very middle-class family, but I had a paper route. I wanted to make my own money. I only made $5 or $6 a week, probably $10. But I had a bicycle, I had a bag. I thought it was cool, and I delivered papers. And from there, I worked at a restaurant as a busboy, and then I went there and ... And I worked all those years. So by the time I got to college, I graduated from college, I already had 10 different jobs. Okay. So it wasn't that I was going to make the perfect decision, but I knew that I wanted to be in sales and marketing, and I knew that that's where my passion was going to be. Right. So I think that doing as many things as I can. Young people don't have that experience, so where do they go get that experience? That's where they got to really dive into what they like to do and what they don't like to do, because that's going to help them make the decision. But what they should do is make that decision knowing that they're not going to probably be happy immediately.
Right.
And they're going to have to take a couple of jobs before they find that happiness. But let's try to do it let's try real hard to find that right job we can stay in for 2 or 3, 4 years. I'm not talking about month cycles.
Right.
I'm not talking about 6-month cycles. I'm talking about, you like what you do, you don't love it, but you're willing to do it for 3 years.
Yep.
You're going to have to do a couple of those before you figure it out. And then I think that younger people have to rely on their mentors to have those hard conversations and to ask the hard questions about what is that job really like?
Right.
What's that job really like? But it's hard for young people because they haven't had the opportunity to do so many of those other little jobs to help figure out, other than they like math and they want to be an analyst,
Right.
or they're very personable and they want to be in sales.
Right.
They don't know generally what kind of company that, it's a hairy subject. It's a big subject, really hard.
Yeah.
For the opposite spectrum, that's when they got to reinvent themselves.
Yeah.
That's where that reinvention comes back in. And whether you're at 40 years old, you're at 50 or 60, you have to reinvent yourself. And the way that you do that is best by, again, identifying what your strengths are. Because your experience might be 25 years in consumer packaged goods, soft drinks, for an example. Well, just because you've worked for Coke and you've worked for Dr. Pepper 7-Up and you don't want to work for Pepsi, there's thousands of other companies that would love to have you on their team because of the experience that you've had. Right. There's thousands of companies that would love to do business with Pepsi or with Coke and Dr. Pepper, and you know how to do business with those companies because you've worked for that company for a long time. Right. So you really have to keep the blinders off, and you really have to start looking at life in the hub and spoke model. As far as what the hub is what your strengths are, but the spokes then become all the different things that you could do with that kind of experience.
Right.
And this is heavy lifting that most senior executives don't want to do because they've never had to do it.
Yep.
How many times do I meet with candidates, they say, I've never had to look for a job. I've always been recruited, and now I'm out of work.
Yeah.
Well, that's heavy lifting.
Absolutely.
And the way that they found their first job 20, 30, 40 years ago is not the way you find a job today. So it requires a completely different set of skill sets and day-to-day activities.
Right. Well, and I would say, too, would you agree that, kind of bridging those two, if you're in the first camp, you're that young, startup, you're coming out of school or you're in your first few years of work, building that network. I mean, you mentioned the mentors, because when you become that 40, 50, I mean, I've dealt with this in my life at different times whenever I either wanted to make a change or thought I was going to have to make a change. Those are the first calls you make. So if that well is not, if that well is dry, if you're 30 years old out there and you don't have anyone right now, if you were to lose your job, to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, can you help me? You better get after it, right?
Absolutely. 100%. And everybody's got a little bit of a network, but it's never too early. It's never too late to start building your network. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. It's so important, personal and professional.
Could not agree more. All right, one last thing as far as just tips and tricks from a very successful entrepreneur. Goal setting. What does yours look like? Do you have a defined discipline on your goal setting, and what does it look like?
Right. So as I said before, I try to achieve everything I try to do is based on goals, because how do you know you're successful if you don't set goals for yourself? Yep. So every year, this time of year, I go through a goal setting as far as how many new clients do I want to achieve? What's my annual revenue target? What do I want to try to achieve this year versus last year? And then I include, those are pretty top line numbers. If it drives the number of clients, it drives the number of candidates, it drives everything. Really is driven by that revenue. But then I break it out by quarterly, I break it out by month, so that I know, and I've got something that I can look at. Instead of just at the end of the year making that assessment, I've got to be able to know every month, every quarter, whether or not I'm on track or not, so that I can readjust or go work harder, or maybe I can take a little bit more time off, or I can go do something that I'd rather do. Right. But also embedded in all that, something that I've not done as good a job as I'm working on in the last 3 years and working forward, is that personal development. And I think that entrepreneurs leave that off of their their dashboard very often.
They think it's a luxury. They don't understand it's a necessity.
It is a necessity. And I don't care where you do it, if it's a part of association or it's a group that you join, a Vistage group or something like that. But you've got to find yourself accountability partners, and you've got to find, ways that you can continue that personal development, because that's where your value continues to grow.
Right. Well, as we get closer to wrapping up, I want to offer you this opportunity, because obviously there's a lot of hiring managers and everything that listen to the podcast. It's who are geared towards both, the business folks. And I don't do sponsored podcasts. I don't do paid podcasts. You're doing this out of the goodness of your heart as a favor to me. So I want to offer you the opportunity. Tell folks about your business. Where can they find you? When will they need you? And how do they reach you? I mean, this is your time, man. It's your space. You've been good to me. I want to reciprocate.
So, Jason, I help companies fill hard to fill jobs. That can be a confidential search that a company's got to embark on because they're going to let somebody go that they can't even tell their HR team about.
Right.
It could be a search that their internal team's been looking to fill for a couple of months, and it's a revenue generating, or it's a really important job that they haven't been able to find. Or it's just a family-owned business that doesn't know any better. They know they've got to hire people. They don't know where to go. Right. So they're looking for more than just somebody to fill jobs. They're looking for an advisor. And it's really important in the hiring process. Big companies have the onboarding. They have all the resources. Smaller companies don't have that. And so in many cases, I fill those shoes as well, as by helping them. How do you onboard this candidate? And how do you do everything from not only dating the employee, but now we got to make it an offer, and we've got to bring them on, and how do you help them, just the first 6 months. So I help with all of those things. But my passion is people. I work on both sides of the coin. I love talking to candidates. I love working with companies, and I'm always open to having conversations. The best way to get me is at Kurt@linkedexec.com, Kurt, linked, Linked, exec, exec.com. Thanks, Jason. This has been great.
Well, man, I appreciate it. One last question before I let you run. So 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey. There's one chapter where he does an exercise where you hear music playing. The music's coming from a church. You walk into the church. You realize you're at a funeral. And before long, you realize you're at your own funeral. And it's here that Covey says, all right, seriously, close the book and decide how you want to be remembered. When this journey's over, you literally, like you said, on a daily basis, on a very personal level, you're dealing with people's careers. You're touching lives every single day. When it's all said and done, business, non-business, whatever, how do you want to be remembered? What do you want people to say?
It's just that passion for people that I was always there. I was willing to listen. I was willing to help. I was willing to make an introduction. I've been fortunate, Jason, this is off the subject, but recently to be able to work with a group called Elite Meet. It's a bunch of guys that are making transition from the military into civilian life.
Yep.
And in it, I don't get paid for it. It doesn't do anything to generate revenue for my business, but it's helping somebody.
Yeah.
And that allows me to sleep. I am matching amazing, extraordinary talent with amazing companies. And the results that they achieve are more fun than God allows, to be able to listen to those stories and hear those success stories. But talking to a candidate that's in a job search and being able to give them a couple of bits of advice that maybe help them accelerate their search makes me sleep at night. So I'm blessed to have the opportunity to do what I love, which is people.
Awesome. Kurt,
thanks
so much for the time, brother. This
Enjoyed
has been
it.
great. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Hey, folks, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Texas Titans podcast. Before you go, I wanted to let you know where you can find us out there on the interwebs. You can go to show notes as well as listen to all the past episodes and look for upcoming shows at textitans.blog. Also, that has all the different formats that you can listen to the show on if you go there. So textitans.blog. You can also go to jasonwrightnow.com. That has not only a link to the podcast, but it also has a link to my Make Your Own Rules blog that I think you'll enjoy, so please check that out. Also, it has information about my executive coaching business, speaking, and anything else like that, so jasonwrightnow.com. That's literally just my name, jasonwrightnow.com. On Twitter, I'm at jasonwrighttx. I would really appreciate a follow. I have not been a big Twitter user, so I need you guys to help me with that, so please take the time to go out to Jason Wright TX, find me and follow me. I'm trying to get more active with it. And so if you'll engage with me, I'll try to do a better job of engaging with you. So I would appreciate that. And then on Instagram, I'd really appreciate a follow there. I'm at Jason Wright Now. Again, my name now. So please follow me on Instagram. And then on Facebook, I'm also at Jason Wright TX. So check us out there. And I'm also on LinkedIn, so look for me there. I try to use as many platforms as possible to let you know about upcoming shows, past shows, and then also just anything that I find interesting. I'm trying to push it out and get better with the social media. So please check us out there and follow us. I would be most grateful. And also, please do not forget, it means the world to me for you to go to iTunes, give us a rating. Right now, we've got that 5-star rating. I'm hoping to hold that. Please, please, please. The comments that people are writing are so very kind. Thank you so much. It means the world to me. And that's how we keep moving up in the ranks. And right now, we're crushing it with downloads. The show has really had incredible feedback thanks to you guys. So I'm grateful. Please keep that momentum going by giving us a review on iTunes. Thanks so much and have a great day. And as always, I could not be more grateful for you listening. Thanks.